15 seconds. I want to welcome everybody to Heaven Bound Baptist Church Wednesday night Bible study. Welcome to those who are joining us online on Facebook and on YouTube. We're glad that you can join us. I just want to make sure that there we are. There we are. All right. I just want to make sure that it was running before I got too far into it. I learned that lesson a couple Sundays ago to make sure I checked that. So welcome to Wednesday night Bible study. Like I said, we had those that are joining us online. You're more than welcome to come join us in person. We do have a potluck meal before the Bible study at 6 o'clock. And it's always a wonderful meal. Tonight we had pizza, and man, you just gotta love pizza, don't you? And some hot wings. There were some hot wings back there too. They were pretty warm. And some fudge rounds. I love them fudge rounds. But tonight we are back studying again Matthew 26. We're back in Matthew 26. And before I go any further, if Dottie and Leo are watching us tonight, I'll say happy birthday, Dottie. I hope that you are having a wonderful evening. And I know Leo took you out somewhere wonderful. So happy birthday. Tonight we are picking up in Matthew 26 in verse 17. We're in verse 17. And we're going to be talking about the Passover and the Last Supper tonight. And so Matthew 17 starts off and says, now on the first day, and I'm reading now the New King James Version too, if you need to know that. It says, now on the first day of the feast of the unleavened bread, the disciples came to Jesus saying, where do you want us to prepare for you to eat the Passover? And he said, go into the city to a certain man and say to him, the teacher says, my time is at hand. I will keep the Passover at your house with my disciples. So the disciples did as Jesus had directed them, and they prepared the Passover. Now Jesus is going to go with his own people, with his own disciples, into this upper room. And when they get up there, he's getting ready to make a huge announcement. He's going to announce that he's going to be betrayed, and he's going to announce who's going to betray him. And so they go off and they prepare the place for him to have this Passover meal. And the way this is written, it makes me believe that Jesus knew exactly when he was going to die. He knew exactly when he was going to be coming back through here. He knew exactly when he was going to be in Bethany. And so I think that beforehand, he had approached this homeowner and said, hey, when my disciple comes to you and says, the Lord says it's time, then I'd like to use your room. And that's why it says, he says, go into the city to a certain man. So he tells him exactly who to go to. Go to this certain man, and this man that I believe that Jesus had pre-talked to set up. And to say, the teacher says, my time is at hand, I will keep the Passover at your house with my disciples. And I think that was the message to this guy that Jesus needed that room. So after they do that and they get everything set up, it goes in verse 20, and it says, when evening had come, he sat down with the 12. Now, as they were eating, he said, assuredly, I say to you, one of you will betray me. Man, think about that for a minute. You're sitting down to observe the Passover with Jesus. You've walked with him through all of these countries, or these towns that you've gone through him with, all these regions that you've walked with him. Every miracle you've seen him do, every person you've seen him heal, every way that he's touched your life. And then it's just you 12. Just you 12. Just those 12. Those intimate 12 people that were with Jesus in this upper room. And then the first thing that he says is, assuredly, I say to you, one of you will betray me. Man, if that's not a heart dropper sinker right there, I don't know what is. You know, I could just imagine you could have heard a flower you could have heard anything in that room at that time when Jesus said that, because you know those disciples had to blow them out. They had to blow them back, right? Had to just blow them out of their seats because they loved Jesus and they all loved him. And then it goes on in verse 22 and it says, and they were exceedingly sorrowful. And that tells you that when he said that, these disciples, it were just immediately exceedingly sorrowful. So it just ripped their heart apart to hear this. And so that's what he's facing in this upper room. And that's the bombshell that he just laid down on them. Now imagine those disciples receiving that news. I mean, man, one of us is going to betray you? Come on. Wow. Who is it? Is it me? And then each of them began to ask him. He said, and each of them began to say to him, Lord, is it I? Is it me? Am I the one that's going to betray you? You know, just like that song says, Judas betrayed Jesus for 30 pieces of silver, and we betray Jesus every time that we sin. Every time that we sin, we betray him. Is it worth it? Is it worth it? What is your 30 pieces of silver to betray Jesus? And so every one of the men knew that he had within his heart betrayed Jesus in some way. And if you look at your own life, and like I said, if you look at your own sins, you can see how in your own way that you have betrayed Jesus. We all have betrayed Jesus in a way, in some way. And I'm sure that's what these disciples are thinking. And you know, nobody is above sin. Nobody is above betraying Jesus. A lot of times we like to think about when we sin, that's an okay sin. We can do that sin and get away with it. But no matter what it is, every time you sin, you betray Jesus. You are a Judas every time that you sin. Think about it like that. And I think that that'll help put it in perspective. And we'll see that in our lives how often it is that we betray Jesus. And then he answers them in verse 23, and he answered and says, he who dipped his hand with me in the dish will betray me. The Son of Man indeed goes just as it is written of him, but woe to that man by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. That is woe to that. Jesus is saying, woe to the man that betrays me. That's Jesus saying that. Just think about the magnitude of that. Woe to that man by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It would have been good for that man not to have been born. Wow. Wow. You just might as well not been born if you were that man that was going to betray me. That's what he's saying there to him. Man, that's huge. Then Judas, who was betraying him, answered and said, Rabbi, is it I? He said to him, you have said it. You have said it. And I think it's interesting to note in this verse here that at this time, Judas does not. You notice in verse 22, at the end of verse 22, go back a little bit to the end of verse 22, the disciples start saying, Lord, is it I? Lord, is it I? And then in verse 23, In verse 20 and 25, Judas says, Rabbi, is it I? He's got a different wording there. The others call him Lord, and Judas calls him Rabbi. Now think about that. Now, why would that difference be? Why would one call him Lord and one call him Rabbi? Because he's Lord of our life, right? He's not a rabbi. He's the Lord of your life. I think at this juncture, and I think the reason of that is that Judas is going to betray Jesus, and Jesus is not the Lord of Judas's life. He's not the Lord of his life. And he doesn't call him Lord. He doesn't address him as Lord. He addresses him as Rabbi. And what's Rabbi? Rabbi is a good teacher. Good teacher. Good teacher, not Lord. So he's given himself away. He's saying what's in his heart is what he's doing. If you read that, he's saying what's in his heart. He says, Rabbi, is it I? And he said, you have said it. And then I can imagine at this time Judas leaves the room immediately. And if you read over in John 13:30, he says, he then saying that he received the bread. As soon as he received the bread, he was out. He was immediately out of there. As soon as he took that bread and put it and dipped it with Jesus, he was gone. He left to go do the betrayal that he was going to do. And they tells us over in John 13:30 is where that picks up at. But the point here is that Judas, they thought he was just a regular disciple, just like everybody else. They thought he was in on the program. They thought that Jesus was his Lord too, just like the other disciples. But he didn't. And so people can sit inside our church. They can sit inside our church. They can listen to our services. They can come to Bible study. They can be baptized every Sunday. And Jesus still not be the Lord of their life. If you look at this guy who walked around with Jesus for 3 years, saw the miracles that he did, saw everything that he did, and was that close to Jesus. He was so close, he was a disciple. He was one of Jesus' chosen 12 disciples. And he betrayed him. He still was not the Lord of his life. So within our own church, there can be people in here who are not, who Jesus is not the Lord of their life. Just because somebody comes to church, just because somebody's here every Sunday or every Wednesday, does not mean that Jesus is the Lord of their life. And it's the same thing with Judas. He did everything. He did everything with all of them. But he was not the Lord of his life. So we have to be careful. And more importantly, you need to make sure who the Lord of your life is. Who are you following? That's what we need to tell ourselves. So we need to ask ourselves. We always need to ask ourselves, who am I following? Who is the Lord of my life? Jesus Christ has to be the Lord of your life. He should be your reason for getting up in the morning, your reason for going to bed at night. You should be thanking him for every breath that he gives you. It's all about Jesus. It's not about me. It's not about anybody else. It's not about anything that we do. It's only about Jesus Christ. And Judas lost that. Actually, I don't think that he ever had it. And then he goes off and betrays Jesus. And then in verse 26 it says, and as they were eating, Jesus took bread, blessed and broke it, and gave it to the disciples and said, take, eat, this is my body. Then he took the cup and gave thanks and gave it to them, saying, drink from it, all of you, for this is my blood of the new covenant, which is shed for the many, for the remission of sins. And so here we see, right here, Jesus is instituting the Lord's Supper. This is Jesus instituting the Lord's Supper. He had never done this before. And because they were up there to observe the Passover, right? And so he is instituting the Lord's Supper. And I could just see that this cup, as it's passed around to all the disciples take a drink of it. And then at the last one comes to Jesus, and Jesus tells them, drink from it, all of you, for this is my blood of the new covenant, which is shed for many of the remissions of sins. And so as they go through this Passover, they're probably like, what's going on here? Because this isn't a normal Passover. We're supposed to be doing this Passover meal. They knew it was the same thing, the same process over and over and over. That's what it was. It was just routine, tradition that they did. And so Jesus is kind of throwing he's throwing a little hook in there. And he's instituting the Lord's Supper here. And I can imagine that they don't even know really what he's talking about until the next time that they're in the upper room with him after his resurrection. And so when they're doing the Passover, they're actually, do you remember when we did the Passover meal here? Remember the Passover meal here? There was some singing that we did, right? And I picked different songs than what they would have picked then. But the songs that they would have picked then, they were psalms, right? And they would actually sing the psalms from 111 to 118. That's the psalms that they would sing at the Passover, right? So if you get a chance to go back and read Psalms 111 through 118, and that'll give you an idea of what they were saying, the words they were singing at the Passover. And they would have been doing that this night too. It'd been like every other Passover meal that they had shared together. And so at this Last Supper, this one here, because Jesus is getting ready to die, this is his last Passover meal. And at his last Passover meal, he institutes the Lord's Supper. And what do we do during the Lord's Supper? It says it on our little table down there. Doesn't it? Do this in remembrance of me. Doesn't our table say that? I know one of my other churches did. Do this in remembrance of me. I had to think about that real quick. Do this in remembrance of me. So every time that we do that, we need to be remembering Jesus. We need to remember, first we need to clear our hearts and clear any unconfessed sin that we have in our lives. We should always make sure that we confess our sins. We want to make sure that we take the Lord's Supper with a clear conscience. You have to take it with a clear conscience. And so we observe him. Jesus is the monument that we observe during the Lord's Supper. And so when's the next time that he is going to take this Lord's Supper? This isn't part of my lesson tonight, but after this night, this Last Supper, when's the next time that he's going to take it? When we're in heaven with him, when we're at the feast, when he returns and we go to the feast. Yep. Man, that'll be an awesome feast. You think Wednesday nights we have a good feast? Wait until he comes back and gets us and we have a feast in heaven, man. That's going to be wonderful. We're going to be singing some Psalms 111 through 118 and shouting hallelujah and praise the Lord, and we'll have it. They say we will have a supper feast, a marriage feast. It's going to be a good time. It's going to be a party when Jesus comes back. We're going to have a good time. There'll be some kind of food. It says feast. I mean, I don't know what you can't. You got feast on some food. They don't give us all the details of the feast, But it talks about the banquet table. Everything refers to having a meal together. And that's why I think it's important that we have meals together. Because what happens when you have meals together? You get to know each other. You build that bond. You're one family. And so when we have that marriage feast of the Lamb in heaven, we'll all be one family. Just think about that. There'll be no more of our bodies and no more of this world and all this garbage that's going on. We will be in heaven having this marriage feast of the Lamb. Man, that's something to be excited about. That you ought to be excited about that, man. That is something to be excited about. And so that's the next time that he will partake of the Lord's Supper. You're laughing at me. I get excited thinking about it. I just get excited thinking about it, man. The day that he comes back, and I know sometimes it sounds kind of bad when I say I just can't wait to go home to be with the Lord. But it's not. I can't wait for him to come through the clouds and take us all up at the same time. Man, that's going to be wonderful. Just picturing him coming through the cloud. Now you got me going on it. Just picturing him coming through the clouds to get us. Man, how great that's going to be. We're going to forget all this garbage, man. You know, we're out of here. We are out of here. It's done. It's over. Now life is going to start. Life doesn't start until we get on the other side. That's when life starts. But I can't wait. I look forward to it. But I do hope that we all leave at the same time. My desire is not for me to leave my wife. Like that's what she says. It sounds like you really want to leave me pretty bad, that you would like to die to get away from me. But that's not. I look forward for us all to leave at the same time, for the rapture to happen all at the same time. That's what I look forward to. That's better. One foot out the door. Sometimes she got that one foot kicking me out the door. Just like Tom, he knows. But we should be looking forward to that time. That's what we are living for. We're not living to go to work tomorrow. We're not living we're not living for retirement, you know, even though I can't wait for it to get here. That's not what we're living for. We're living to get to the other side. We're living for the day that he comes through them clouds. As soon as we step into eternity, life starts. That's not death. That's when life starts. Huh? Forever. Forever. It starts forever. That is the first day of forever. That's right. And so we should be excited about that. And if Jesus Christ is your Lord and Savior, if you believe the things that you read in the Bible, if you truly, truly believe them, then you need to be you should be looking forward to that time. Lord, take me home. Come on, come through the clouds. Let's go. Let's get it over with. I'm ready for it. Won't have to watch none of this other garbage going on at these colleges around the country and all this silliness going on. But now I've gone way over. So in verse 26 it says, But I say to you, I will not drink of the fruit of this vine from now on until that day when I drink it new with you in my Father's house. So the Passover will be reinstated during the millennial time. During the millennial, when Jesus is reigning on the earth. Now, during the millennial, where are we at? We're in heaven. We're already gone home, right? Those who are here on earth, those who make it through the tribulation period, the Passover will be reinstituted for those people during that period. And so the Lord said that he was going to drink of the fruit of the vine again in that kingdom. And so this means that apparently that the Passover is during that time, during the millennial, is going to look back at the time when he was on the cross. All right? That's what the Passover will look at. It'll look at his death on the cross. And so the Passover that we have looked to for centuries, even what we're looking forward to now is his coming. That's what we're looking forward to, his coming. And so during the millennial, that Passover will be reinstituted to look back at his coming when he died and when he died on the cross. And then in verse 26, or in verse 30, it says, and when they had sung a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. So they sang a hymn, and then they go out to the Mount of Olives. And then let's go ahead and do the prediction. We have the prediction of Peter's denial here. Verse 31, it says, then Jesus said to them, all of you will be made to stumble because of me this night. So he's telling them, hey guys, all of you are going to be made to stumble on my account during this time, because it is written, I will strike the shepherd and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. This is a prophecy here. He's telling them a prophecy. This is a prophecy that was fulfilled and is going to be fulfilled. And it's from Zechariah 13:7 is where this prophecy comes from, where it says that I will strike the shepherd, ooh, that got loud, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. That comes from Zechariah 13:7. And it was fulfilled that night. And so right now, and that's a prophecy fulfilled, right? So Jesus can't come back until all the prophecy is fulfilled. What prophecy has to be fulfilled before Jesus returns? Not a one. All prophecy has already been fulfilled. That means that Jesus can come back anytime. Anytime he can come back. Matthew 26:32 and 33, it goes on and says, but after I have been raised, I will go before you to Galilee. Peter answered and said to him, even if all are made to stumble because of you, I will never be made to stumble. You got to love Peter. You got to love him. First, before I talk about Peter, notice that he says here, the first thing that he says is, after I have been raised. He's telling them that they're going to kill me. They're going to strike me down. You guys are going to stumble because of me. And then he says, but after I have been raised, after I've been raised from the dead, I will go before you to Galilee. So he's telling them he's going to see them again. He's going to see them again. And this is important because after Jesus was raised from the dead, they physically saw him, touched him, ate with him. Jesus ate after he was raised from the dead. So when Jesus was raised from the dead, he was raised in what kind of body did he have? What kind of body do you think it was? Huh? No, it wasn't ghostly. It was a physical body. It was a physical body. He had all of his, they could touch him. Remember, they could touch him in the upper room, right? He sat down and ate with them. He had a physical body. And so what this tells me is that is his resurrected body. Jesus was resurrected when he appeared to them. He was resurrected when he met them in Galilee. He was resurrected when he met them in the upper room, when he sat down and ate with them. That was his resurrected body. And so I think that tells us some stuff about our resurrected body. You know, because we always wonder what our resurrected bodies are going to look like and what they're going to be like. Well, if we look at Jesus after he was resurrected, the times that he appeared after he was resurrected, we can see a little bit about what our resurrected body might look like. For one, we might be able to eat because Jesus ate. He ate. We could touch. They touched him. They felt him. So, and he had holes in his hands. Yes, he had the scars on him still. And I believe that when we get to heaven, that you know, we all get that resurrected body. We won't have any more aches and pains and scars and broken bones and all this stuff that ails us now. But the only one who will be Jesus will have his scars in heaven, in eternity, to remind us of what he did for us. those are the only scars that'll be in heaven. There's a song about that. No scars in heaven. I remember that song. I don't know the words to it. You don't want me to sing it, but it's a good song. But his will be the only scars in heaven. And when we think about it, I like to look at that and think that, Jesus was in his resurrected body here. So that tells me that my resurrected body may look like, may react like, may be like a little bit like his. And one thing that Jesus did was, and the thing that I love, and I know I've said it before, is that he traveled at the speed of thought. He thought he was somewhere and he was there. He was in the upper room one second, next second he was on the road to Galilee appearing to some other people. Just like that. So when we get to eternity, we won't be walking like Otis there. We're gonna be we're gonna be walking like with our speed of thought, man. How great is that gonna How great is that gonna be? And I won't have no more back pain, or you won't have any of that. But and I think that that is so cool to think about. Jesus moved like that, and so that tells us what we might move like. I wouldn't pick it on you, Otis. I love you. But one day you won't have that cane, and one day you'll be moving just like that. Yeah, that's right. Jumping up and down, running all over heaven, beating everybody. Beating everybody running. I mean, not beating everybody over the head, but beating everybody running. All right, we better go on. So Peter his answer suggested that Peter here doesn't trust the other 12. At this point, it makes me think that he doesn't trust the other 12. But he wants Jesus to know that, you might not be able to trust these other guys, but me, you can depend on me. You can trust me. He said, these other guys, they'll fall and they'll stumble, but no, I'm not going to. You can depend on me. And what was Peter's problem? He didn't really know himself, did he? And a lot of times we don't really know ourselves. But Peter didn't know. Peter had no idea what was in store for him. And he didn't know the problems that everybody else has is the same problems that he has. And it's the same problems that we all have today, is that we don't really know ourselves that well. And in verse 34 goes on, it says, Jesus said to him, assuredly I say to you that this night, before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. So Peter says, I'm not going to stumble. I'm a big, tough guy. I'm a man's man. I ain't going to happen to me. And Jesus comes back and says, assuredly, this night, before the rooster crows, you will betray me 3 times. You're just like everybody else. You're just as weak as everybody else. And we are weak. We are all weak. And Peter said to him, even if I have to die with you, even if I have to die with you, Jesus, I will not deny you. Wow. And then all the other disciples, of course, piped in, and so said all the disciples. So after Peter says that, all the disciples agreed with him, and they said that. So Jesus tells him that he's going to betray him 3 times, and Peter says, oh, no, no, no. Even if I have to die with you. And the problem is that Peter doesn't realize yet what Jesus is really going to do, what's really going to happen. And I still don't think at this period any of those disciples have a clue what's getting ready to happen. They still don't. And that's why he's so boastful, and that's why he's so arrogant, and that's why he can say, hey, Jesus, I'm not going to stumble. I'm going to stick with you. Ride or die, I'm with you. And we're going to read here in a little bit that Peter denies him 3 times and he runs, right? How many times do we deny Jesus? Now, you may not stand up and you may not say, I don't know Jesus, but your actions speak a lot louder than words. Can somebody, you know, I heard a sermon one time about the preacher said that if you were brought into a court of law, convicted of being a Christian, or uh, not convicted, but charged with being a Christian, could you be convicted? Could your life show that you were convicted, that you were a Christian? Could they look at your life and convict you of being a Christian? Or can they look at your life and say, hey, we don't know if that guy's a Christian or not? What does your life show? How do you live your life? Who's the Lord of your life? Do you have that personal relationship with Jesus Christ? That's what it's about. Can you be convicted of having that personal relationship with Jesus Christ? Or do you look just like everybody else in that plant or in that shop or wherever it is, or your work area? Are you just the same as everybody else? Do you cuss just as bad as anybody else in the shop? Do you carouse around just as bad as anybody else around there? Can they tell you? Can they convict you by your life, by your way of life, that you are a Christian? And unfortunately, a lot of times they can't. And so we need to look at that in our lives, and we need to make sure that somebody can look at our lives and say, that person is a Christian. That person is different. I may not know what he is, but I can tell that that person is different for some reason. Your actions speak louder than your words. And so Peter, of course, is going to deny him not once, but he's going to deny him 3 times, just like Jesus said. And so next week we will get into the Gethsemane. And let me put a note here, right here. So next week we'll get into, we'll pick up on verse 36 next week. Let's see here, we're at, right here. Because things get real intense in the Garden of Gethsemane, and I want to take some time and just think about what happens in the Garden of Gethsemane. This is an important part of this chapter, is the Garden of Gethsemane. So we will take some time and go over that. Do we have any questions? Any comments? Shane, can you cut us off? We want to thank everybody for joining us tonight, those that have joined us online, whether you joined us from Facebook or you joined us from YouTube. We hope you could hear us good. We do have a new mixing board back there that hopefully will be online next week, and you'll be able to hear us real good. So we thank you for joining us, and hope you have a good night, and God bless you. Let's end in a word of prayer as Shane is closing us down over there. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this night. We thank you for this lesson that you've given.